So yeah, again, my name's Alec. I am the sales rep for Umpqua Feather Merchants, but previous to this, I was guiding for a long time and was actually a team member of Fly Fishing Team USA for a couple of years, and this is where I picked up this technique. Let's first talk about what is Euro Nymphing. It's going to be indicatorless tightline fishing, and you're having the ability of managing how deep your fly is at all times. You're just able to maneuver your flies and focus your drifts so much more effectively with this. We're also in direct contact with the flies as opposed to an indicator telling us when something's happening. Let's first talk about the river here. If we were to look at it through the water like this, let's use my arm as a gauge. The top or the surface of the water, that's the fastest moving bit. As you get deeper, it is much slower here. So I'm going to grab this strike indicator setup really quick. So like I was saying, we have a tapered leader with a strike indicator, we have weight, and we have the flies. Your flies essentially are going to be doing this as they come down the river. If they're weighted, they're eventually going to be dropping down here. So when I cast this into the river and we know that the surface water is the fastest, that's now going to drag this stuff down faster downriver than your flies. So what do we all do when we start? We make that big mend. So let's talk about the setup for a Euro style rig here. First, we got the rod. Typically, most people are fishing 10-foot to 11-foot rods, and I would say the meat and potatoes is a 3-weight or 4-weight. Using a 3-weight is meaning it has a very sensitive tip, guys. It's going to detect all sorts of things when you're tight to your flies, and it's also going to protect your tippet. So that's a big part of it. Now I'm able to easily fish 6X, even 7X with a bigger fly in heavier water and feel a lot more comfortable with it. Fishing with a Euro leader is quite intense if you jump straight to the end of the line, okay? I would say this is something you're going to have to progress in as far as getting to know how to operate these things, because you're essentially eliminating the weight that's in a fly line that helps you flex a rod to cast it, okay? Here I have a 22-foot long leader that's just all mono. I am now switching to using the weight of my fly to load my rod. So, let's talk about the progression of leaders that you guys should kind of start with. First and foremost, I would say starting with a longer, just tapered leader, something like this. Umpqua makes a hot butt leader, and it's got some cider incorporated into that. And what a cider is colored lines so you can see it. So I would start with this. It's about 10 foot long. I would add a piece of cider material. And what that is going to be actual tippet that is single or double colored. This is now going to act as your strike indicator, guys. It comes in all sorts of sizes, so you can build a taper into it. So let's say I used a, what size leader is this? 4X. So I could cut this back to about 2X, add a piece of 3X cider. From my cider material, I am going to add a tippet ring, and then I can drop off any size tippet I want to. So a more advanced leader would be building your own taper out of leader tippet material to try to achieve that same length. So I've created a really light, long leader so I can cast over there, keep my leader very straight off of my rod tip and keep my flies over there, as opposed to the weight of my fly line slowly dragging them across the current. Okay, let's talk fly lines. In all honesty, you're probably not going to use your fly line much anymore if you eventually get to this 20-foot long length, essentially. Fly lines, though, typically the Euro lines are going to be a very thin diameter with the same purpose of eliminating some of that mass, and they're going to be very sensitive with either a braided core or a monofilament core. You know, traditionally with a strike indicator setup, as you guys all know, if we're going to do multiple flies, we're going to tie off the bend of the hook like you see here, or maybe off the eye of the hook to a second piece of tippet to another fly. With the Euro system, we're going to be using the tag system. So I'm going to use some cider so you guys can see it all. And again, this is just for presentation. I'm not going to tie flies on here traditionally. So let's call this red section my leader that's coming from my fly line. We're going to call the yellow section my tippet that's going to my second fly. I'm going to tie a surgeons or a double surgeons or triple surgeons, depending on who you are. I'm going to come through the loop 3 times, okay? So now when I tighten this knot, instead of grabbing both tags and leader and tippet at the same time and pulling, I'm going to hold one end of it so I can hold on to a nice long tag here. Okay, so this again is my leader. This is my tippet. Now I have a place I can tie my fly. I am choosing this end of the knot, this tag, because this is actually part of my leader. So it's going to be a stronger piece to use than the piece that comes up here. If I'm using this one, now I'm pulling against the knot the whole time as I'm fighting a fish. This one, I am actually in contact with my leader, and it's just only tightening the knot, making it okay. So at this point, I would trim this little tag. Okay. And now, how do I decide what flies I'm using? Because now I'm not using a split shot where I can tie on any flies I want, because the split shot's doing all the work. I've got to think a lot about the weight of my flies I'm going to choose and how I want to fish them. A lot of the times, I'm going to choose the bigger, heavier fly down here, and maybe my emerger or more realistic size fly up here, okay? So now this fly is going to be what we call a point or anchor. It's going to be doing all the work to get you down, while this guy is dangling around up here, you know, off the bottom of the surface. Now, if I was really focusing in an area and I knew they were both sitting on the bottom, I'm actually going to put my heavy fly up here and my light fly here. And what that's going to do, essentially, is it's going to keep your fly distance from the bottom like this, as opposed to this, okay? So coming back to the rig now, again, I'm fishing one fly, it could be 2. So I've got that sighter, and I've got about 6 feet of tippet here coming off of a tippet ring. There's one other thing I want to share with you, is with the sighter, okay? There's a lot of different things you can do with sighters. One of the things I like to do is actually leave one of my tags. I've gone from 2x to 3x, and I've left one of my tags. It's just an additional little piece for my eyes to catch, okay? If you grease this with, let's say, a dry magic, you can grease that a little bit more, and that's now going to stand up on the water. It's pretty cool. Another thing you can do, and you should know, is all sighter material, doesn't matter what company, what brand, it'll eventually fade, so changing it out. Or if you're in low light situations, you can actually use these new paints that have come out. This is a popular new thing. Essentially, you dress this, and now it's a very fluorescent piece of your leader that you'll be able to pick out quite nicely. So now let's talk about the cast, guys. We've got this ridiculously long leader on here, and it's got no weight. So now I've got to somehow get my fly upriver. A lot of it's gonna be kind of a lob or just a quick loop cast or even a tension cast, okay? So being forceful with that cast to get it up there, okay? When I'm actually gonna make a longer cast, I'm just gonna make one Belgian loop. So I'm coming back, I'm never gonna break stride and then just come forward. So again, just coming forward and over the top, and I can be very accurate. So once I've placed my fly, you can see there is literally no impression beyond the fly of my leader hitting the water. Once I've hit the water, I can be off the water as well, and I'm in contact right away. So I can just really quickly be in the zone, really focused, and really work water quickly. So yeah, now we're actually fishing. Let's talk about it. There's a couple of different ways to look at it. The Polish and the Czechs, they kind of started this thing. They have very turbid, fast water. So when they fish this style, they actually lead their flies and almost drag them downstream. They're gonna have complete contact with their flies at all times. So any tick on the bottom or anything like that, they're gonna set the hook. The Spanish and the French, they fish oriented a lot more up, straight upstream, or maybe a little bit off to the side. and a lot more vertical. So letting the river do all the work, just stripping in any slack they may have and staying in contact. The French are known for making a super short drift and setting the hook right away without feeling anything. So they'll just be really focused in an area, set. So they're dealing with a fish called the grayling, which has such a subtle take, often you don't even feel them, okay? Yeah, now we're looking at this water. We can make long drifts, we can make short drifts, but without further ado, I'm gonna work a little bit of water. Take your time to get into position. I'm gonna come way downstream. And now I'm gonna start in close, okay? I'm not gonna fish right by you to start, guys. I wanna make sure I've covered all this stuff close before I work far. Short, focused drifts. So I'm on the bottom now, I'm searching, and just working my way up the seam. So you can see the cast is just simply a pick up and put back down. I'm not doing all this beautiful stuff up here. I'm looking at the cider material. It's helping me judge how deep the river actually is. Once I see my cider material kind of go slack, I now know I can kind of lift up a little bit more, so I'm not just dragging a bunch of tippet on the bottom of the river too. So any sort of hesitation, I'm going to set the hook. Okay, so from that now, guys, this is where I'm going to start dissecting. What do I need to do? Do I need to add more weight? Do I need to fish smaller? That's where I'm going to start making these adjustments. So really, it's allowing you to quickly fish effectively and decide what's the next thing to do until you start consistently finding fish, guys. It's all about that process. Okay, so same style fly of the torpedo. This is going to only have one bead though. I definitely have a wide variety. Again, weight is very important. Like I was saying, when we think about kind of traditional streamer fishing, guys, we're casting downstream and we're making these strips, which works very well at times. In between each one of those strips though, we're out of contact with that fly. When we apply the same kind of tight line or Euro Nymphing technique that we were doing before with this, I can cast it up here and now I'm in contact and on the bottom right away. And I can now just subtly twitch it. It's just a way of searching maybe off color or bigger water. As far as how my arm is working with this, I'm not just doing this because I'd be creating slack with each time I do it. Every time I twitch, I'm actually using my whole arm, so I'm in contact the whole time. So if I get a bite, I can set the hook right away. This is going to be a lot more subtle way of searching this water with a streamer where you can really be thorough with it with multiple casts. All right, well, let's talk about flies, guys. As far as fly design, I mean, yeah, you see a lot of these Euro flies having some sort of bright tag or collar or wing case. Just like with regular old, standard nymphs, we're trying to create an attractant to look towards that. Often if I'm fishing a bright fly, I'm going to have a second fly in the scene that's going to be the much more natural kind of deadly predator, if you will. That's the one that's actually going to catch the fish. Now in off-colored water, the bright one might be the ticket still. So yeah, let's come down. Let's see if I can actually catch a fish for you guys.